Welcome to this installment of the TROM beginner level audio course. This presentation alone can start you doing TROM exercises right away, even if this is the very first you've ever heard of TROM. I'm Allison Tandry. The channel is DIY Salvation, and the subject is the resolution of the mind, also known as TROM. Many people who first learn of TROM get the idea that they need to study the entire book, some even the entire subject, before even starting to do the exercises. There's a lot to know in TROM. And thanks to our efforts at DIY Salvation, the subject has never been easier to understand or more accessible to the masses. Despite this, I still get emails now and then from people who have studied TROM for a while, and still haven't even done the first exercise in the manual. I used to scratch my head and wonder about this. I started to worry that maybe we had not made the subject clear enough on this channel. But considering the lengths we've gone to simplify this subject, I can't believe that's the real reason anymore. I have a better guess nowadays, and a simpler explanation that can lead to handling this fundamental problem early TROM practitioners have in getting started. Throughout man's history, the mind has been regarded as a mystery. A specialized category of study that only the most brilliant and the most educated can undertake. It's widely believed that if you are having problems with your mind, you need to see a psychologist or psychiatrist. Even in the subject of Scientology, a study that claims to eliminate the need for psychotherapists, L. Ron Hubbard warns that the mind cannot be fully handled by oneself, and one needs to see a practitioner at a Scientology organization to resolve it. So even then, all that's changed is instead of going to a medical office to see a psychologist or psychiatrist, one goes to a church to see another type of trained professional who has his own theories about how the mind works, and insists you need his help in order to handle it. Therefore, when Dennis Stevens, the man who researched and developed the resolution of the mind, also known as TROM, made a claim that he discovered a way to resolve the mind working by oneself, I am sure there were many who did not believe him, psychologists, psychiatrists, and Scientologists alike. Or maybe they do believe him, but they still think that they themselves need to be an expert at TROM first before beginning this task. Also, there is the concern that there are going to be a minority of people that aren't in good enough mental shape to attempt such a feat as resolving their mind on their own. And in that you would be right. There is a small portion of the population that simply aren't up to the task. And that is why Dennis developed the exercises described in the chapter on Level 1 in his book, The Resolution of the Mind, a Games Manual. The exercises are a test to see if one can go on to Level 2 without seeing a separate therapist. In this presentation, I am not only going to tell you how to perform the first exercises, but also some of the theory behind them, and the reason why you need to do them before going on to Level 2. By the time you finish listening, you will know exactly what to do. So make sure you listen to the entire presentation. It's a small investment of your time to learn a technique that could very well change the course of your life, and begin one of the greatest adventures you will have in it, the resolution of your mind and spiritual condition. So, what is the first exercise one does in TROM? It's a process of creating things around you. You don't create actual objects. You put them there with your creative force as a being. Or in simpler terms, you could say you imagine them. You could call it a visualization exercise. It doesn't matter what way you wish to understand it, as long as you know that's what you do. The first exercise consists of putting mental creations surrounding you over and over again, then doing the same thing but while considering that someone else is putting them there, then going back and forth between those two activities until you are 100% comfortable doing it. Does this sound like something you can handle? I'm sure you can, so let's go deeper into why this is done, a little more specifically into how it's done, so you can finally get it done and not have to worry about doing endless amounts of study before doing it. When a conflict occurs in life, what we call a mental mass forms in the mind. A mental mass is just a tiny amount of substance in your mind. Mental masses are also called importances. The mind stores these conflicts, mental masses, or importances. The idea of importance comes from being forced to know. Now, what do I mean by that when I say that importance is a result of being forced to know? You are forced to know mathematics, science, and history because the society considers these things important, so you are sent to school to learn them. Those subjects then become solid in your mind. Similarly, a conflict is someone else's enforcement of the importance of something, whether it be their feelings about something, their opinions or beliefs, or something as solid as their fist coming towards you, along with your resistance to accepting that importance. That's what forms the mental mass in your mind. And that mental mass will thereafter affect the way you think and behave until it's been resolved. Dennis Stevens came up with a method of handling these so-called importances called time breaking. It's the main technique used in TROM therapy. You take one of these mental masses from the past, whether it be an object, person, or event, and view it simultaneously with the present. By viewing the past and present simultaneously, you break the illusion of time, thus the term time breaking. The simplest form of time breaking is on level 2, where you view an object from the past next to an object in your present and compare the two. In comparing the object from your past to an object in the present, you de-intensify the effect of that past object on your mind. You diminish the mental mass. And that's all that's required. To give you an example, let's say you were threatened with a knife at one point in your life. If you were to compare the knife in that incident to an object in present time, and compare it to other objects as well, and follow the systematic method for doing this at level 2, once you could continue the exercise comfortably and without the upset that accompanied the event, you will find that not only have you relieved some of your past trauma, but also that the presence of knives in your environment no longer makes you feel uneasy. This is just an example for the sake of instruction. Please do not try doing such an exercise until you've studied the materials for levels 1 and 2 of TROM, and done the prerequisite exercises first. Dennis Stevens found this exercise of comparing people and objects from the past to some objects in the present an effective way to rid one's mind of a considerable amount of these mental masses. But that posed a problem. Anyone who has a mind, that is to say, any human, has so many of these mental masses that he's not only gotten used to it, but actually believes he needs them. And because of that, when he performs the time-breaking exercises in TROM and rids himself of these mental masses, he feels imbalanced. Therefore, after losing some mental mass, he will attract to himself more harmful mental masses to fill that void, resulting in an unpleasant state of affairs. Dennis solved this problem with the exercise called repair of importances. And that's really just a fancy term for the exercise of creating things around one, like I described earlier in this video. But to be clearer on what this means, you considered something from the past to be important, even though it was upsetting. Through TROM exercises, you rid your mind of that importance. Therefore, you are lacking these importances or mental masses you are used to having around yourself. So you repair this condition by creating things around you, which are essentially non-harmful mental masses. Thus the term repair of importances. I guess he could have just as easily called the exercise replacement of importances, and in my humble opinion, this would have actually been a more accurate description of what you are doing when you conduct the repair of importance exercise, also known as RI. You replace lost mental masses with masses of your own, and that's all there is to it. This exercise also has the benefit of orienting you to your present environment. After all, if you are going to handle your past by viewing the past and the present at the same time, you need to be thoroughly grounded in the present in order to do so. This exercise, the repair of importances exercise, is repeated all the way through the entire TROM program, right until the end of level 5. You do it at the beginning of a session, the end of a session, and between TROM exercises. Because you do this exercise throughout the entire TROM program, it's of utmost importance to make sure that you can get results from doing it. Some people can't. Those are the 5% I told you about earlier. But those people, once they have seen a separate practitioner, will be able to get results afterwards, and can progress on to level 2 of TROM and work by themselves from that point onward. But even before one goes to see a separate therapist because the repair of importances exercise did not work for them, there is an alternate way to do the exercise. Instead of creating things around oneself, One gets his fill of masses by contacting with his hands actual physical objects around himself. This will also orient him to his present-time environment. Now that we've covered the general idea of how and why all this is done, let's get more into the specifics. I will now quote directly from the book, The Resolution of the Mind, a Games Manual by Dennis Stevens, the commands for this exercise. 1. Bring something into existence. 2. Have another bring something into existence. The first command is run over and over until there is no more change, then the second command is likewise run. Then the first command and then the second command again, until both produce no more change. The creations should be placed around you 360 degrees spherical. You don't have to do anything with the creations, the act of creation is sufficient. Quality of creation is far secondary to quantity of creation, abundance is of the essence. Dennis does not specify an exact procedure for placing things around one, but an effective way of doing this I and other Trommers have found is to do the following. Bring something into existence in front of you. Bring something into existence behind you. Bring something into existence to the left of you. Bring something into existence to the right of you. Bring something into existence above you. Bring something into existence below you. Then do the same upper left of you, upper right, lower right, then upper left behind you, upper right behind you, lower left behind you, and finally lower right behind you. You then start the cycle again, bringing something into existence in front of you. The two other command variations, which follow shortly, can be done in the same way. There are alternate commands. 1. Create something. 2. Have another create something. The word create is for many an emotionally charged word, and these people will find the preceding commands easier. They mean the same thing. The other alternative commands are 1. Create an importance. 2. Have another create an importance. Many will prefer this set and should use it. Try each one of these command sets and see which you like best and use it for future RI sessions. It is not necessary to perceive one's creations. The certainty that one has created is sufficient. There is another class of RI called RI by perception. This is where the being repairs his scarcity of importances by increasing his contact with, and reality of, an existing importance in the present-time physical universe. He can repair his scarcity of importance by physically contacting such a solid present-time physical universe object. Grasping such an object with your hands and feeling its solidity, temperature, texture, and so on, will repair importance. Many who have difficulty with the creative RI commands will be able to use RI by perception. Any being who can use the creative RI exercises will also be able to use RI by perception, but should use the creative version by preference. Any being who can only use RI by perception early on should from time to time during the levels have another go at the creative versions. Sooner or later, one will click, and thereafter should be used in preference to the RI by perception method. The only difference between the two methods is that in the creative version the being is actually generating the importance. During the course of RI you are going to feel some discomfort. Do not be alarmed if things like your eye starts to water, you feel some uneasiness in your stomach, or get a tired feeling or numerous other possible sensations. You may experience emotional changes as well. This means the exercise is working. The wrong thing to do is to stop the exercise when that happens. You must continue the exercise until all such feelings and sensations subside and you can comfortably perform the exercise. The action of shifting your attention out of your past and on to the present, as well as replacing mental mass you've lost during one of the later TROM exercises, is not always a pleasant one, but it is necessary in order to restore your mental balance and orient yourself to your surroundings so you are in the moment rather than stuck in your mind or in the past. Now let's suppose I am trying TROM for the first time. I choose create something. I decide since I like cats I create a cat in front of me, one behind me, above me, and so on. I go through this series several times. I start to yawn a bit. I continue and I yawn more. I then continue until the yawning goes away, and when I am comfortable again, I switch to the second command, have another create something. Now you can handle this any way you want, just as long as you have the concept that someone else is creating whatever it is you are putting in front of you, behind you, and so on. You can just put an object, mentally, in front of you with the idea someone else put it there, but many times I like to actually visualize someone putting it there. For instance, I put a girl in front of me blowing bubbles. The bubbles are created by her. I put her all around me, and during this maybe my leg begins to shake. I continue until it stops shaking, and any other sensations, emotions, or reactions subside and I am comfortable once more. I switch back to the first command. I yawn a few times, it goes away, then I am fine. I go to the second command. After several cycles of placing things around me, nothing happens, so I go back to the first command, and nothing happens during that either. Since I have gone 2 in a row with no changes, I am finished with RI. Since I got results doing RI, namely the yawning and the leg shaking, I know the process works for me, and the next day I start on level 2 of TROM. Now, if nothing happened, I could try a different command like bring something into existence. If I try all 3 and nothing happens, I try perceptual RI. I grab hold of, for example, a cup on my desk and hold it for a while. I note how it looks, I feel its temperature, and so on. I may do this for a while. If I get a reaction, I continue holding it until it goes away. I can do this with other objects until I am comfortable doing the exercise and there are no more reactions. But, if I try placing my hands on things and long periods of time pass and nothing happens, then I can conclude after having tried all the RI exercises that I am going to need help. And that, I hope, gives you an idea how to go about this and what to expect. To sum this up, you create things around you using one of the 3 command sets, whichever you prefer. You create things around you, then create things around you considering someone else has. You alternate between the 2 until there is no reaction to either. You only stop after you have run one, then the other with no change. If that doesn't work, contact things with your hands. If none of this works, make sure to watch the video advising you what to do next, because you are not ready for level 2 if this happens. We do have a FAQ as well as a model session presentation on this channel, and a visual presentation is in the works. You can also write us at tromguides@gmail.com if all else fails. Before doing this exercise, make sure you have had sufficient rest, you are not hungry or in pain, and that you are not under the influence of alcohol or medications. And make sure you have a place and time set aside where you can do this alone and undisturbed. The commands for these exercises are in the video description for your convenience. I recommend printing them and having them handy. And there you have it. Everything you need to know in order to start your first TROM exercise. You need not put this off any longer. This has been a presentation of DIY Salvation. Don't just use your mind. Resolve it.
Imagine a simple mental exercise that brings you into the moment. Imagine understanding the illusion of time and being able to break it. Imagine ending the conflicts from the past once and for all. We are DIY Salvation. Don't just use your mind, resolve it.